The floor-to-ceiling windows glowed with the lights of Manhattan, a skyline glittering like diamonds spilled across black velvet. The penthouse soared above it all, wrapped in glass, marble, and curated laughter. Waiters in black and white weaved through the crowd, refilling flutes of vintage champagne, balancing silver trays of caviar and figs soaked in port. A string quartet played near the fireplace, but no one was listening. All eyes were on the man of the hour. Adrian Lancaster, sharp as a blade in his midnight tuxedo, raised his glass to the chandelier. His salt-and-pepper hair was combed back like a Wall Street warlord, and his smile, charming, smug, untouchable, cut through the chatter. 45, he declared, the flute gleaming in his hand. And just getting started. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and spread the word, and tell us where you're watching from. Applause burst like a staged finale. Paparazzi cameras flashed. Zoe wrapped her arm around his, the diamond on her finger blinding even from a distance. At 25, she was everything the tabloids loved, a runway siren with endless legs, glossed lips, and a gaze that screamed conquest. She leaned in and whispered something that made Adrian chuckle deep in his throat. The party loved them, but not everyone applauded. Near the bar, half obscured in the edge of a mirrored column, a woman watched. She wore black, not the glamorous kind, but the quiet, efficient shade of someone meant to blend in. Her hair was swept into a tight twist. No jewelry, no expression. Just eyes, calm, focused, memorizing. She sipped sparkling water, the flute cold in her hand. Adrian hadn't noticed her. Not yet. He moved through the room like he owned it, because he did. Real estate mogul, tech investor, magazine darling. He greeted a senator with the same smirk he gave a TikTok celebrity. When Zoe laughed too loudly at something a film producer said, Adrian's hand tightened slightly at her waist before returning to his drink. Still adjusting? Someone asked behind him. He turned. It was Jordan, his CEO, loyal, sharp. The man who once delivered flowers to Cassandra every Monday on Adrian's behalf. Adrian gave a nonchalant shrug. Upgrades come with glitches. Jordan hesitated. Cassandra used to plan these parties. Adrian's jaw ticked. Cassandra used to do a lot of things. He walked away before Jordan could respond. On the balcony, Zoe posed for pictures against the skyline. Her champagne-colored dress clung to her like skin, the slit high enough to provoke whispers. She knew the angles. She knew the game. But when Adrian joined her, placing a possessive hand at her lower back, her smile faltered for half a second. Inside, the woman in black moved toward the back staircase. No one stopped her. No one saw her. She moved like someone who had once belonged in this room, once knew every corner. In fact, she did. She'd hosted 8 of Adrian's birthdays in this very space. Cassandra hadn't come to make a scene. She'd come to witness. From the lower level, she watched the toast replay on a mounted screen near the bar, Adrian's speech looping in perfect narcissistic clarity. The same lines he used 5 years ago at his 40th. The same smirk. Only this time, the woman on his arm had changed. Cassandra's gaze dropped to the phone in her hand. A message lit up from a blocked number. Results confirmed. All 3 match. Happy birthday, Adrian. She didn't smile. Not yet. She placed the phone back into her clutch and stepped toward the elevator unnoticed while upstairs. Zoe laughed too loudly again, and somewhere, barely visible, a tiny baby sock peeked from the flap of Cassandra's leather bag. The apartment was still, cloaked in the dim amber light of a single lamp. Rain tapped against the window pane, soft and rhythmic, like a lullaby stretched too thin. Cassandra sat motionless on the couch, one hand resting on her knee, the other holding a lukewarm cup of tea she hadn't sipped in over an hour. The clock on the wall ticked steadily. 12 p.m. By now, Adrian would be halfway through his second toast. Champagne in one hand. That synthetic grin stretched across his face, Zoe dangling from his arm like a trophy made of glass. Cassandra pictured it not with bitterness but precision. She'd seen this performance before. The guests changed. The curtains, the models, the wines. But Adrian never did. She leaned forward and set the untouched tea on the table, then reached under the couch cushion. Her fingers found it immediately. Worn leather, thick with memories and something colder. A notebook, dark brown, cracked at the edges. The initials CL barely visible on the cover. She opened it slowly. Inside, A Polaroid of her and Adrian from 10 years ago, smiling, younger, before his ambition swallowed their marriage whole. She flipped past it. Next, a photo of Adrian and Zoe taken by a tabloid photographer 6 months ago, his hand suspiciously low on her hip, weeks before Cassandra ever heard the word divorce. She turned the page again. Hospital bills under a pseudonym. 3 identical birth certificates, copies of the NDA she had drafted, then burned, and tucked into a flap in the back. 3 more items, a sonogram, a grainy security photo, and a letter written in Adrian's handwriting, never sent. Each page whispered something different. Regret, betrayal, proof. Cassandra didn't flinch. She'd read it all before, every night since the triplets were born. From the next room, a soft cry broke the silence. Then another. Then the third joined in, fragile and echoing. Cassandra closed the notebook and stood. Her heels clicked softly on the old wood floor as she crossed into the nursery. 3 white cribs stood side by side like sacred altars. Pale blue nightlight, a mural of clouds above. She knelt beside the first crib and gently stroked the chestnut curl on her son's forehead. He stopped crying first. "Shh," she whispered. "You're okay." The second child stirred, fists clenched, eyes fluttering. Cassandra lifted him with practiced grace, cradling his weight with the confidence of someone who had done it alone, by choice, not weakness. She hummed softly. The third baby, her only daughter, blinked up at her with Adrian's exact eyes, dark, searching, sharp even in infancy. Cassandra held all 3 in her gaze. "He doesn't know about you," she said, almost to herself. "Not yet." She returned the second child to his crib and adjusted the blanket. Then she walked back to the living room. The notebook sat open, the envelope with the DNA results peeking out like a knife from a sheath. She didn't touch it. Instead, she picked up her phone, opened a secure messaging app, and typed a single sentence to an unknown contact. "Prepare everything. I'll be ready in 2 days." She pressed send, locked the phone, and turned out the light. In the nursery, the triplets had gone quiet again. The silk sheets clung to Zoe's skin as she lay across the king-sized bed, her bare legs tangled in luxury. The scent of Adrian's cologne still lingered in the air, cedar, musk, and something expensive. She reached for his pillow, burying her face in it like a cat in sun. He was gone already. Early meetings. Always urgent. She sat up slowly, the skyline beyond the bedroom windows painted in soft strokes of morning gray. Manhattan was quiet at this hour, still drunk from the night before. Zoe padded barefoot across the hardwood floor and reached for her espresso. Cold. She didn't care. Her eyes fell on Adrian's phone, left unlocked beside the sink. Temptation flickered. But she didn't touch it. She didn't need to. She already knew how to play the game. 3 years ago, Zoe had been just another face in a Soho fashion event, barely 22, barely noticed. But she noticed him. Adrian Lancaster. Not just rich, not just famous. He had presence, the kind that made men defer and women pretend not to look twice. She made sure he saw her looking. Their first conversation had been about art, then politics, then real estate. He liked women who spoke with elegance but not too much edge. Zoe mastered that balance within minutes. He bought her a drink. She let him. He invited her to lunch. She declined, once. By the 3rd date, he was the one chasing. By the 5th, she let him believe she'd never heard of his wife, Cassandra. She didn't say the name out loud even now. Zoe leaned against the glass window and watched the city. Her reflection stared back, soft and calculated. Adrian had fallen fast, but Zoe didn't mistake obsession for love. She knew the difference. And she used both. She had studied the things he liked: classical music, Bordeaux, legacy. She quoted his interviews back to him during pillow talk, played coy with just enough intelligence to keep him circling. And slowly, Cassandra faded. One day, Zoe had opened the door to Adrian's brownstone and found Cassandra's coffee mug in the sink. The next day it was gone. She had won, or so she thought. Now she wasn't so sure. Last night after the gala, as she unpinned her earrings and stripped off the champagne-colored dress, she had asked a simple question. "Do you ever miss her?" Adrian had paused too long. "No," he said. Then he added, "She was useful once, useful." That word had clung to Zoe's ribs all night. She'd asked him other things too. Innocent things. Why don't you ever talk about your past? He gave a vague smile. Too busy building the future. She tried to laugh it off, but his eyes had gone dark for a moment. A flicker. Like something was locked away. Now standing in his penthouse, Zoe moved to the walk-in closet. His suits lined the racks like soldiers. She noticed one jacket pocket slightly bulging. She reached in, a baby sock. Soft. Blue. Too small to be a prank. Too clean to be old. Her fingers curled around it. Her mind didn't. Adrian hadn't mentioned children. Ever. Zoe tucked the sock back into the pocket and closed the door. Back in the bedroom, her phone buzzed with a new message from her publicist. Something about an interview, a shoot, a dress? Zoe ignored it. She climbed back into bed, staring up at the ceiling. Somewhere beneath the surface of her perfect life, a truth waited. Quiet. Patient. And she was suddenly very afraid she wasn't the only one playing a long game. Adrian sat at his desk, glass of scotch in one hand, the other flipping through a stack of letters he hadn't asked for. The envelope was plain. No return address, cream-colored, expensive. Inside, a photo, glossy, deliberate. 3 babies, all swaddled in matching blankets. 2 boys, 1 girl. Their eyes barely open, their mouths slack in identical cries. He exhaled through his nose and tossed the photo aside. Pathetic, he muttered. He picked up the next letter. Another photo. This time, the same 3 babies, maybe a few weeks older, nestled in a stroller, Manhattan skyline in the background, carefully composed. The third envelope contained a hospital wristband, no names, just a date he recognized. The same week, Cassandra had vanished from every social event without explanation. He downed the rest of the scotch and poured another. Tabloid vultures, he thought. Or worse, a social climber hoping for a payout. He'd seen it all. Imposters claiming paternity, fake kids, forged papers. A woman once mailed him a lock of hair in a velvet pouch. That had ended in a quiet settlement. Adrian wasn't rattled. He was insulted. Still, the timing was inconvenient. The birthday gala had gone well. The press coverage had been flattering. Zoe looked radiant. Investors were buzzing. And yet these letters kept coming. 3 envelopes arrived the next morning. 3 more the day after. He didn't tell Zoe. She didn't need more reasons to spiral. She was already asking too many questions, digging at old ghosts. Adrian unlocked his phone, scrolling through texts. We need to talk. It's about her. The message was from Monroe, the private investigator he'd hired during the divorce, a man who billed in silence. He hadn't heard from him in over a year. Adrian stared at the message for a full 10 seconds before deleting it. Monroe always had a flair for drama. The door to his office opened. Zoe, wearing a silk robe, barefoot, her expression unreadable. You coming to bed? He nodded, stood up. Just going through some junk mail. She glanced at the letters on his desk but said nothing. She was learning, finally, not to press. As she left, Adrian picked up the baby photo again. He studied the boy in the middle. Something about the brow, the jawline, familiar but only if you squinted. He chuckled under his breath. They always wanted to look like you. He walked to the fireplace and tossed the photo in. Watched it curl in orange. His phone buzzed again. A second message from Monroe. She's not hiding. She's preparing. Adrian turned the screen off without reading further. He moved to the bar, refilled his glass, and let the sound of ice fill the silence. The city blinked outside his windows. Indifferent and cold, he took one last look at the burning edge of photo before the flame devoured it. A man like him. Didn't need the past, he rewrote it. The conference. Room had smelled of fresh ink and power. 10 years ago. Cassandra sat across from Adrian in a sleek boardroom lined with floor-to-ceiling glass. Her heels clicked against polished marble as she handed him a thick folder marked Lancaster Asset Protection Agreement, Draft 7. She wore a navy suit then. No makeup. Just sharp intellect and soft restraint. Adrian, younger and hungry, leaned back in his chair, watching her with the gaze of a man who knew he was winning, both in business and in love. You sure about this? He asked, flipping through the pages. You're writing your own prenup. Against yourself, Cassandra smiled faintly. I'm protecting your legacy. You are my legacy. She didn't flinch, but the words lingered longer than they should have. A part of her had wanted to hear them for years. Another part, the older, steelier part, had stopped believing them months ago. Clause 17 had been her addition, a sentimental flourish. A clause that stated, "In the event of betrayal by the undersigned husband, any children born within 5 years of dissolution shall have full rights to inheritance and legal legitimacy, regardless of prior contest." At the time, Adrian had laughed. "Betrayal? You planning on cheating?" "No," she had replied. "But you might." They toasted to it with 2 glasses of Macallan and signed beneath gold-embossed seals. Back then, she didn't know how far Adrian would go to make her feel invisible. Not just in court, but in every room, every glance, every silence stretched too long. Now, years later, Cassandra sat at her kitchen table, the same contract unfolded before her. The pages were creased at the corners, ink still bold. Her finger traced down to clause 17 like a prayer. She remembered adding it late one night the week before the wedding, while Adrian slept beside her. His breath even. His phone screen dimmed. She had seen a message then too, someone named Lena, the kind of name that came with soft R's and coastal selfies. But she had ignored it. That was before she understood what it meant to vanish while standing. Right next to someone, she turned to the final page, Adrian's signature, arrogant and loud, her own, controlled. Next to the document sat a new envelope, sealed, addressed to Monroe. Inside, authenticated copies of the prenup, the DNA results, and a notarized timeline of the children's births. Cassandra wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't even grieving. She was focused. The baby monitor crackled softly in the background, a soft sigh, a shuffle of tiny limbs. The triplets were sleeping. She hadn't told them yet what they meant to the world, what they were entitled to. But she would. She would do for them what she once did for Adrian, build a fortress. From paper, from law, from blood. The next morning, Monroe would deliver the envelope to the attorneys, and when Adrian's legal team opened it, they'd recognize her handwriting, her clauses, her precision. They'd also realize something else. Cassandra Lancaster had not disappeared. She had simply been preparing, and she had used his empire's own language to write her. Revenge. The clinic was tucked between a pawn shop and a shuttered laundromat on the edge of Brooklyn, where the city forgot to clean its own corners. No signage, no street number, just a frosted glass door and a quiet buzz when she pressed the intercom. "Name?" the voice asked. "Catherine Lowell," Cassandra replied. A pause. Then the lock clicked open. She stepped inside. The fluorescent lighting hummed overhead, casting everything in pale blue. The waiting room smelled of antiseptic and old paper. A toddler wailed faintly down the hall. Cassandra didn't flinch. A nurse in mint scrubs looked up from the reception desk. Her eyes widened, recognition flickering beneath practiced calm. "You're—" she began. Cassandra raised a hand gently. "It's fine." The nurse stood, smoothing her uniform. "They're ready for you." "Down the hall, last door on the left." Cassandra nodded, walking slowly past faded chairs and old parenting brochures. The silence of the place made every footstep sound deliberate. She stopped outside the final door, knuckles hovering. Then, without knocking, she entered. The room was cold, windowless, a single metal table and a folder placed precisely in the center. Sealed. Labeled with her alias, the same one she had used when she checked into this clinic months ago, belly tight with 3 lives inside her, and no name she was willing to give. The same name she'd scribbled on intake papers between contractions. A different nurse entered quietly, older, with warm eyes and a clipboard clutched against her chest. "You're here for the results," she said. Cassandra nodded once. The nurse hesitated. "You sure you want to open this, ma'am?" "I wouldn't be here if I wasn't." The nurse set the clipboard down and gently pushed the envelope toward her. "They're all individually verified, triple confirmed, no room for ambiguity." Cassandra didn't reach for it yet. "Do you have children?" she asked softly. "2, the nurse replied. "Both grown." Cassandra gave a tight smile. "Then you understand." She picked up the envelope and ran a thumb along the seal. It trembled slightly. The only tremor she'd allowed herself in days. She broke it open. 3 separate documents, each with the same conclusion. 99.9998%. Probability. Paternal match, Adrian Lancaster. Her chest didn't tighten. Her throat didn't close. The proof was not a revelation, it was a weapon she'd always known she was holding. Cassandra folded the papers and slid them back into the envelope. "Do you need copies?" the nurse asked. "No, originals only. I'll file the copies myself." The nurse reached out, touched her elbow gently. "If it were me, I'd burn him alive with it." Cassandra smiled, sad, sharp. "I don't need fire. I have law." She left the clinic the same way she came. Head high, eyes forward. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sidewalk glistened. She tucked the envelope into her coat and crossed the street without looking back. In her mind, she wasn't walking through Brooklyn anymore. She was walking into a courtroom, into a boardroom, into a gala with lights so bright even Adrian wouldn't be able to look away. And when he did, he'd see everything she had built, starting with the truth in her hands. The penthouse was too quiet. Zoe moved through it like a ghost, bare feet on cold marble, the scent of Adrian's cologne lingering without him. He'd been gone since dawn again. No message, no call. Just a cold side of the bed and a coffee mug still full on the kitchen counter. She stared at it now, arms folded. Something had changed. Adrian had become distracted, distant, and worse, careless. She'd caught him staring out the window during dinner the night before, jaw tight, mind elsewhere. When she asked if he was okay, he blinked twice and muttered something about logistics. But she knew that look. It was the same one he wore when closing multi-million-dollar deals. But this wasn't business. This was something else. She crossed to his briefcase. It was still on the table, left in a hurry. Normally locked, today slightly unzipped. She hesitated only a second before opening it. Contracts, a pen, a folded tie. And at the bottom, something soft, out of place. Zoe's fingers curled around it slowly. A baby sock. Tiny, pale blue, with a cartoon elephant embroidered near the toe. She stared at it for a long time, her breath shallow, her pulse loud in her ears. When the door clicked open minutes later, she didn't move. Adrian stepped in, removing his coat, loosening his tie. He looked up and froze. Zoe stood at the table, holding the sock like it was radioactive. His eyes flicked to the briefcase. She spoke first. Her voice was low, controlled. "Whose is it?" Adrian didn't answer. "Don't lie to me," she said. He stepped forward. "You're going through my things now? You left it open. That doesn't give you permission." She laughed once, bitter. "So it's my fault?" He snatched the sock from her hand and threw it across the room. "It's nothing." "Nothing?" Her voice rose now. "Do you think I'm stupid? There's a baby sock in your bag, Adrian. We don't have children. At least not together, do we?" Adrian's jaw clenched. "Drop it." Zoe stepped closer. "You're hiding something. And I swear to God, if you've been sneaking around with some woman and playing house with—" "I said drop it," he snapped. Silence fell between them, thick, hot, charged. Zoe's lip trembled. Not from fear, from fury. "I will leave," she said quietly. "And when I do, I won't go quietly." Adrian leaned in, eyes narrowed. "You think you know how this game works?" "I invented it. You walk away from me now and I'll make sure you're nothing but a whisper in a tabloid. You'll never book another campaign again. You'll be invisible." Zoe stared at him, this man who had once held her like she was the prize. Now he looked like a stranger. "I'm not Cassandra," she said. "No," he sneered. "You're not." She picked up her purse, turned for the door, then paused. "I'll stay," she said. "For now, but only because I want to see how this ends." He didn't respond. As she left the room, Adrian ran a hand through his hair and stared at the briefcase. He should have burned the sock. The knock came just after sunrise. Cassandra opened the door to find Maribel standing there, one hand on her hip, the other gripping a garment bag twice the size of her torso. "You're insane," Maribel said without greeting. "But also, I've never been prouder." Cassandra stepped aside to let her in. "Did you bring them?" Maribel walked in, heels clicking over the hardwood, her sharp bob swinging with every step. She laid the garment bag carefully on the couch and unzipped it like she was opening a vault. Inside, 3 miniature navy suits, crisp tailored, perfect. Each came with a matching vest, silk pocket square, and monogrammed handkerchief tucked discreetly into the inner lining. "They're beautiful," Cassandra whispered. Maribel smiled, softening. Custom-stitched from last season's Hugo collection. No logos, timeless, symbolic. Cassandra ran her fingers along the lapels. The fabric was cool, deliberate. The shade of navy nearly identical to Adrian's favorite power suit. I had their initials embroidered under the collars, Maribel added. You know, just in case anyone doubts who they belong to. From the nursery came a giggle, then a chorus of babbles. Cassandra turned. It's time. She dressed them one by one, first Julian. He squirmed, but his smile widened when she slipped the tiny tie around his neck. Then Leo, quieter, more observant, watching her hands with solemn curiosity. And finally Elise, her daughter, the smallest but already the most defiant. Cassandra adjusted her tiny blazer twice before Elise finally let it be. Maribel stood by the doorway, taking it all in, eyes glossy. They look like royalty, she said. Cassandra nodded. They are. She crouched down in front of them, adjusting a button here, smoothing a cuff there. Today you walk into a room and the world will see you. Not as a scandal, not as a secret. As truth with names, and blood, and inheritance. Elise sneezed. Maribel chuckled. Still human, though. Cassandra laughed softly, then turned serious again. Is everything ready? Maribel handed her a black folder. Gala access, staff badges. You'll go in through the catering entrance. No one checks names if you're carrying silverware. And the timing? During the final toast. They'll be distracted by the camera crew and Adrian's speech. You slip through the service corridor up the side stairwell, then enter from the mezzanine. Cassandra nodded. Exactly where he'll see us. Do you have the envelope? Cassandra tapped her coat pocket. With the DNA and the claws, Maribel exhaled. God, this is better than anything I've ever pitched. It's not a pitch, Cassandra said. It's a reckoning. She looked back at her children, now wobbling in their tiny dress shoes, holding hands instinctively. Maribel reached for her bag. Car's waiting. I'll see you inside. After she left, Cassandra crouched again and whispered, You won't remember tonight, but one day you'll ask, and I'll tell you. This was the night the world met you. She kissed each forehead, slipped the envelope deeper into her coat, and buttoned the last clasp. Then lifting her chin, she turned off the nursery light. It was time to walk back into the life that had tried to erase her, this time with witnesses. The gala was already being called the event of the season. Guests arrived in glittering waves, stepping out of town cars and sleek black SUVs onto a carpet the color of aged gold. Crystal chandeliers lined the grand entrance of the Langford Hotel's ballroom, their light cascading over velvet drapes and towering floral sculptures. Inside, champagne shimmered in tall flutes. A string quartet played something decadent near the fountain centerpiece, and the air pulsed with curated opulence. Adrian arrived precisely at 8:30. He stepped from the rolls in a perfectly tailored navy tuxedo, one hand casually on Zoe's back, the other adjusting his cufflinks. Cameras erupted in flashes, capturing the power couple as they made their entrance. Zoe wore a pearl gray gown that clung to her frame like liquid moonlight. Her lips were glossed, her smile sharp. They moved through the ballroom like royalty, nodding, kissing cheeks, letting the crowd bend slightly in their presence. Adrian shook hands with a real estate magnate, laughed too loudly with a hedge fund shark, accepted compliments about his vision and longevity, but something about him felt rehearsed. Zoe noticed it, the way he sipped instead of drank, the glance he gave the security exit, the way his laugh cut off a second too soon. She kept close, careful, watchful. Across the ballroom, Maribel moved among the catering staff, a clipboard in hand. She was dressed like everyone else in black and white, unnoticed. But her eyes tracked every movement, especially the stage. At exactly 9:47, the lights dimmed, a hush fell. A spotlight hit center stage, where Adrian now stood with a gold-rimmed flute in one hand and a practiced smile in the other. 45, he began, and apparently still full of surprises, laughter. He lifted his glass. To legacy, to love, and to the future. But before the room could echo the toast, the double doors at the far end creaked open. At first, no one turned. Then a breeze swept in, catching the edge of a black silk gown. Cassandra stepped into the ballroom. She walked slowly, deliberately, her heels making the only audible sound in the stunned quiet. Her gown fit like armor, sharp-shouldered, floor-length black satin that shimmered under the lights. Her lips were red, her expression unreadable. At her side, 3 children, dressed in navy suits, tiny, upright, holding hands. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd like a falling chandelier. Adrian froze. Zoe's eyes widened. The quartet stopped playing. Photographers hesitated, unsure if this was performance or disaster. Cassandra continued forward, never breaking stride. Every step measured, every detail curated, from the soft glint of the DNA envelope in her hand to the monogrammed initials on each child's collar. She stopped just short of the stage, beneath Adrian's gaze. For a moment he looked down at her, his mouth open. A flash of something behind his eyes. Recognition, confusion. Then fear. Cassandra didn't speak, she didn't need to. Instead, she turned to the children, straightened one collar, and whispered something only they heard. Then she looked up at Adrian and raised the envelope, not with anger, with finality. The ballroom watched, breathless. Then she turned, slow, graceful, and walked out, the children following like silent echoes. No one moved. Adrian didn't finish his toast. Behind him, Zoe lowered her champagne flute, eyes burning into his. He didn't turn to meet her stare. He was still staring at the door, still staring at the ghost he thought he buried. Now walking away, holding his legacy in 3 tiny hands. The silence in the ballroom was total. Cassandra stood beneath the spotlight now, her figure backlit in a cinematic halo of gold and shadow. She didn't flinch as dozens of guests turned in their seats, whispers curling like smoke across the marble floor. The triplets stood behind her, perfectly still, as if rehearsed. Their small suits crisp under the lights, their wide eyes locked on the man at the top of the stage, the man who had given them nothing and taken everything from the woman who made them. Adrian remained frozen, the champagne glass still hovering midair, hand trembling slightly. Cassandra stepped forward. She climbed the stairs slowly, her heels landing like punctuation. At the top, she faced him. Not angry, not bitter, just ready. From her clutch, she withdrew 3 white envelopes neatly labeled. She held them out. "Adrian," she said, her voice calm, carrying across the stunned room. He said nothing. His throat bobbed once. "These are your sons," she continued. "And your daughter. A beat, triplets. Conceived 2 months before your first offshore transfer. Born 7 weeks premature while you were in Capri with Zoe." The crowd gasped again, louder this time. A ripple of unease spread through the elite like poison through water. Adrian opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. Cassandra held his gaze, then turned and extended the envelopes to the edge of the stage where a notary public, Maribel in disguise, stepped forward and took them with silent efficiency. She turned back to the crowd. "I was your lawyer." "Adrian?" she said, voice steady. "I wrote the clause. I protected you, and I protected them, before you even knew they existed." Someone in the audience began recording. Cassandra didn't blink. "The evidence has already been submitted to the appropriate parties," she added. "There will be no scandal, just truth." Adrian dropped the glass. It shattered at his feet, spraying across the polished wood. Zoe stood motionless near the front, a single hand gripping the back of a chair. Her lips were parted, her face unreadable. Cassandra walked to the edge of the stage and paused. She turned once more, met Adrian's eyes. "This isn't revenge," she said. "It's recognition." She descended the steps, her children falling into place beside her. The crowd parted without resistance. No one dared speak. No one dared stop her. She walked through the same doors she had entered, her gown trailing behind like the last word in a long-forgotten argument. In her wake, the ballroom remained still. No music, no chatter. Just the echo of what had been done and what couldn't be undone. Adrian stood on the stage, the spotlight still burning down, and for the first time in years, he looked truly alone. Outside, under the cool air and glittering Manhattan sky, Cassandra knelt to adjust Leo's jacket. "Was I good?" he asked, voice small. "You were perfect," she said. She stood, took Elise's hand, then Julian's, and without a single camera flashing, without a press release or headline, Cassandra Lancaster walked away. Not broken, not bitter, just free. The courtroom smelled of wood polish and tension. Weeks had passed since the gala. but the echoes of Cassandra's entrance and exit still haunted every corner of Adrian's carefully curated empire. Tabloid covers, op-eds, investor withdrawals. The footage of her standing beneath the chandelier stating, "These are your sons," had gone viral. Twice. Now seated at the defense table, Adrian wore a charcoal suit that suddenly looked too heavy on his frame. His tie was knotted too tightly. His eyes, sunken, bloodshot, darted toward the press bench and back again. He hadn't slept. Cassandra sat across the aisle, calm, controlled, dressed in dark blue. No jewelry, no makeup, just presence. Beside her, Maribel whispered something and handed her a folder, but Cassandra barely glanced at it. Her eyes remained forward, fixed on the judge. The court clerk stood. Case 2087B, Lancaster. Lancaster. Petition for paternal recognition and legal inheritance rights, A. Russell moved through the courtroom like wind. Through tall grass, Adrian leaned over to his attorney. "We still have a window to settle. Offer her a trust. Discreet. She walks away and keeps the press quiet." The lawyer didn't look convinced. "She's not asking for money, Adrian. I don't care what she says, everyone has a price." The judge entered, robe billowing behind her. "Be seated." Silence fell. The proceedings began with procedural dullness and introductions, documents, confirmations. But the undercurrent was electric. Every lawyer in the room knew what this really was. A public autopsy of power. Adrian's counsel argued first, pushing for dismissal, citing privacy, reputational harm, and the suspicious timing of Cassandra's claims. They called the Gala stunt a calculated act of emotional sabotage. Cassandra didn't react. When it was her turn, she stood without theatrics. Her voice didn't waver. "I am not seeking financial compensation," she said. "I am not here for revenge. I am here because my children deserve their names." She placed the signed prenup on the record. Clause 17 gleamed like a blade. Adrian's lawyer objected. "That clause is symbolic." "No," Cassandra said quietly. "It's enforceable. I made sure of it." The judge reviewed the documents carefully, page by page, line by line. Finally, she looked up. "Mr. Lancaster," she said, her tone sharp, "these test results are conclusive. Your former wife has presented verified paternity, contractual protections, and no monetary demands. You are their father." Adrian stiffened. The judge continued. "Accordingly, the court recognizes Julian, Leo, and Elise Lancaster as your biological and legal children, with full rights to inheritance, acknowledgement, and name." A hush followed. Adrian's breath caught in his throat. He reached for the edge of the table as if to steady himself, but the weight of the moment dragged him inward. A man used to controlling headlines now buried under them. Cassandra closed her folder gently. The job was done. Outside cameras waited. Crowds pressed against metal barricades. But Cassandra didn't go through the front. She walked out the side exit with Maribel and a court officer, unnoticed except by one intern who snapped a single photo. No flash. No fanfare. The triplets weren't there. They didn't need to be. They had been seen by the system, by the name, by the man who once tried to erase them. As the wind tugged at her coat, Cassandra breathed in deep for the first time in weeks. She hadn't won anything. She had simply reclaimed what should never have been lost. The garden was small but full of light. Sun filtered through the trees, dappled gold resting on white tablecloths and mismatched chairs. Lavender swayed in clay pots. A lemon cake sat at the center of the table, unfrosted, homemade, with a single candle already waiting. Laughter echoed from the grass where Julian, Leo, and Elise ran barefoot, their matching suspenders long abandoned in favor of freedom. Elise carried a juice box like a trophy, leading the charge while the boys chased her in circles. Cassandra watched them from her seat beneath the pergola, her tea cooling slowly in her hand. She was 42 today. The number meant little, except that it had arrived, quietly, gently, without drama or confrontation. A year ago, she had walked into a ballroom filled with camera flashes and history. Now she sat in her backyard with no shoes on. There was no Zoe, no Adrian, no reporters, no lawyers, only a breeze, a candle, and the sound of her children being loud and alive. Maribel stepped out from the kitchen with a tray of cut fruit. "Do you ever get tired of being right?" Cassandra smiled. "Only when I have to clean up afterward." Maribel placed the tray down, then leaned against the post beside her. "They look so grown already." They feel heavier, Cassandra said. In a good way. The legal case had closed months ago. Adrian never appealed. He couldn't. The scandal had gutted his standing, not just in boardrooms but in society pages. Zoe had left him quietly, erasing her last name from the headlines. No statements, no parting shots. Adrian hadn't tried to contact the children, not once, and Cassandra was oddly grateful. Some absences were cleaner left untouched. Do you regret it? Maribel asked softly. Cassandra looked out at the yard again. Elise had collapsed into the grass, giggling. Leo was trying to build a tower of sticks. Julian was asking the dog if he wanted a juice box. No, she said. Not for a second. She set her cup down and stood, brushing crumbs from her linen dress. Okay, she called out to the kids.
Candle time.
They came running, cheeks flushed, hands sticky. The candle flickered in the light breeze as Cassandra sat once more and pulled them in close around the table. Maribel lit the wick, then gave her a wink. Make a wish, Julian whispered. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and like, spread the word, and tell us where you're watching from. Cassandra looked at each of their faces, familiar and new all at once. Echoes of a man she had once loved. Echoes of herself. Of survival. She closed her eyes. No need to wish for revenge. No need to wish for justice. She had already built something stronger. She exhaled and blew the candle out. Applause erupted from 3 tiny sets of hands. Cake first, she said. Then you can go back to world domination. As they devoured slices with messy fingers and exaggerated grins, Cassandra sat back, breathing in the scent of summer. The sound of laughter. The feel of peace that asked for nothing in return. Not celebration, not recognition, just presence. Just now. Her birthday this year was not about beginnings. It was about returning. To herself. To quiet, to joy earned not through victory, but through endurance. As the candle smoke drifted upward and the sun dipped behind the trees, Cassandra felt something she hadn't in a very long time. Whole.